Hello. In this video, I'll be talking a little bit about the differences between grip training and forearm training, and what the differences might mean for you and what that might mean for your goals and the way you actually structure your training. So I think it's important to think about, like I say, our goals when we train this area of our body. So like with any other area of the body, you can think of it in like a bodybuilding physique context, or you can think of it in a performance context, which in terms of weight training often means strength, right? So as an example, you may have a bodybuilder who does a stiff leg deadlift, slow controlled tempo to target the hamstrings and the glutes, right? And you may have a powerlifter who does a standard conventional deadlift and he doesn't give a shit which muscles it targets, he just wants to deadlift the most amount of weight, right? So in that case, it would be pretty obvious that they have two different sets of goals and they're doing something similar, right? Both deadlifts, both hip hinges, but with very, very different kind of goals in mind, right? And so that same dichotomy exists with forearms versus grip, right? Grip is actually an expression of strength in the sense that how much you can grip, how long you can grip for is a strength outcome, right? And you can train it for its own sake. There's grip competitions and they're fun and cool. But most people, I think, train grip if they want their grip to be stronger. They train it for powerlifting often, or for sport, maybe boxing, for example. Strong grip is important, right? So grip training, like I say, is a strength expression which is normally defined as how much you can hold in your hand or how long you can hold something for, or a combination of both, or whether you can pick up an object using your grip, right? And then we have forearm training. And forearm training is actually more, like I say, it's a more of a bodybuilding style. It's a hypertrophy goal, right? As in when we train our forearms, we're trying to make them grow bigger, right? And so this leads us to kind of, as with that example of a deadlift and the stiff leg deadlift, there's different training styles that may look quite similar because they're using the same muscles and everything, but are actually very, very different in goals. So if you want to improve your grip, right, then you're going to be doing static holds with your grip, maybe bodyweight hangs or deadlift holds or anything where you're holding or picking something up, right, and holding it, right? So that's an isometric contraction on the muscle. And as we know, isometric contractions can grow a little bit of muscle, right? For example, you probably have, if you've been lifting for a while, you probably have noticed that your forearms have got a little bit bigger just from deadlifting, that sort of stuff, right? But we also know that isometric contractions are not actually the best way to grow muscle. We know that eccentric and concentric contractions, as in moving up and down with weight, those actually grow much, much more muscle. This is the reason why we don't just hold a bench press halfway, we move through a range of motion, right? So it's really important then, I think you'll see where this is going. If you're deciding what you want to do for your forearms, do you want them to grow bigger for aesthetic purposes maybe? Or do you want your grip to be stronger? So what you shouldn't be doing if you want, let's just take the example of, say you're a bodybuilder and you want bigger forearms for aesthetic purposes, you just want big forearms, right? You shouldn't just be doing dead hangs or that sort of stuff to grow your forearms, because as we just said, that won't be the most efficient way of doing it. So what should you be doing? What you should be doing is moving through a range of motion with the muscles of the forearm. So these could be things like reverse curls, that's a range of motion for the extensors, things like finger curls, that's a range of motion for the flexors on the inside of the arm. It's not to say that doing isometric holds or anything like that is terrible, but what it will do is it will fatigue your forearms. It'll fatigue your forearms, so you not actually going to be as strong on the contractions that actually grow muscle, the eccentric and concentric. Another thing to note here is, especially for bodybuilders, you don't want to let your grip restrict your training of other muscles. So, for example, say you have, your grip can grip 50 kgs and you're bent over rowing 50 kgs. Might well be limited at the grip. You might well be able to do another rep if your grip was out of the equation, but now you couldn't. So now you've got shitty grip training shitty forearm training because it was just an isometric contraction, so not good forearm training, and bad back training because you now stopped way short of failure for your back because your grip ran out. And there's an even worse thing, because now if you were to do some forearm training afterwards, your forearms are going to be tired from the isometric contraction, so you can't do the more efficient forearm training. So what does mean, and this also applies for strength athletes as well. If you're a powerlifter and you can never train your deadlift properly because your grip's always running out, that's not ideal. So the solution, kind of what I'm coming to here, is if you're a bodybuilder, what you should probably be doing is doing all of your back work and anything that requires grip, do that with straps, so you don't have to worry about it. And then train forearms through dynamic ranges of motion, moving through a range of motion, things like finger curls, things like reverse curls. And that'll kind of give you the best of all worlds. There is one little caveat I should add here, and this goes for basically all forms of strength, where often there is a hypertrophy phase associated with strength, right? As an example, plenty of powerlifters will do a hypertrophy phase, trying to grow the muscles that they know they're going to use, and then they'll go into a strength phase to kind of teach those muscles how to be stronger, right? So that's kind of a basic tenet of strength training. And you can absolutely do this with forearms. So as an example, say you actually don't really care that much about the size of your forearms, but you know you've got a powerlifting competition coming up and your grip is weak. What you could do is go through a hypertrophy phase for your forearms, spend 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, moving through the range of motions that I've talked about, finger curls, reverse curls, that sort of stuff. And then you could go into a grip phase and train the grip itself with your now bigger, more jacked forearms. So you can absolutely do that. But I think the point of this video, we've kind of moved through these topics a little bit, but I think the point of this video is basically differentiate in your mind between grip training and forearm training. Decide which one you actually want. Do you want a stronger grip or do you just want bigger forearms? And then go down the relevant path of that. If you want a stronger grip, spend time holding things, gripping things. And if you want bigger forearms, spend time moving through range of motion with your forearms. And whatever you do, try and use straps for the other stuff so you're not restricted by your forearms. Just at the end of the video here, so that's kind of a conclusion. Decide what you're training. Do you want bigger forearms or stronger forearms? And then decide which side you're going to go. So that's the conclusion of the video. But just for fun at the end here, I just want to talk a little bit about a real interesting study that I saw. And it kind of comes down to, it's kind of one of those studies where it's like, so in bodybuilding or in exercise science, you see some studies where you're like, I don't agree with that. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't reflect my experience. But this is a study that kind of does reflect my experience. So I think it's interesting to kind of talk to you about, which is what the study found basically is that grip training, grip strength is super duper specific, more specific than you think. In the sense that, say you're a guy who, you have a crazy deadlift grip, right? You can grip, 200 kgs, double overhand on the deadlift, and you're absolutely fine. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to do a dead hang for a long time. The grip's very different. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have a strong pinch grip. Or imagine the other way around. Say you're a climber and you have an insane crimp, top of fingers here. That honestly doesn't mean you're going to be able to hold a deadlift at all. So there does seem to be a very, very weak correlation between grip strength and one type of grip strength and another type. And what you may not know is that there's about a 50 bajillion types of grip strength. And the best way to prove that to yourself is to watch a grip strength competition. There's so many different types. There's, overhand pinch grip like this. There's a barbell hold. There's overhead hangs. There's crimping. There's like a claw grip like this. There's like a bajillion different types of grip. And as it turns out, the correlation between them is not actually as strong as you think. So just because you're strong on one type of grip doesn't mean you're necessarily that strong on another type of grip. So what does that mean for you? Well, what it means for you is that if you are wanting to train your grip for performance, you need to be very specific. So as an example, if you want to be able to deadlift more, you want to be able to hold on to more on your deadlift, probably best actually to not do dead hangs, but rather to do deadlift holds where you hold a bar underneath you in the deadlift position because it's much more specific. Or say the reverse is true. You're not that concerned about your deadlift, but you notice your grip always gives out on pull-ups. Then you probably shouldn't do deadlift holds. You should probably do dead hangs because it's much more specific. So just a fun little conclusion on the end of this video is if you are wanting performance out of your grip, you want it to do a specific grip event or have your grip be strong in a certain way, when you train, be very, very specific to that style. That way your carryover will be better. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. In conclusion, if you want big forearms, do dynamic forearm movements for a range of motion. If you want strong grip, hold on to things in a very specific way to what your goal is. So yeah, thanks for watching and have a good day.